Caleb Ward had spent most of his life riding across the wide desert plains, where the sky stretched open like a big blue blanket, and the wind carried the scent of dry grass and warm earth. He liked the quiet of the land. He liked the way the sunrise painted the hills gold each morning, and he liked that no one expected him to talk much. Caleb was a man of few words, but he understood the land better than most people understood each other. On one calm afternoon, he guided his horse along a narrow trail that followed the edge of a ridge. The sun was still high, but long shadows had begun to fall between the rocks. Caleb was planning to reach a small spring before dusk, where he usually let his horse drink and rest. Nothing in his day felt unusual until he spotted something lying near an old, half-burned campsite below the ridge. At first he thought it was a bundle of blankets left behind by travelers. But something did not look right. A strange stillness hung in the air. The kind that made a man's senses sharpen. Caleb stopped his horse and looked again. He saw a small movement, just a tiny shift, like a slow breath. His heart gave a quick thump. "That's no blanket," he murmured to himself. He guided his horse carefully down the slope, making sure not to startle whoever or whatever was down there. As he drew closer, Caleb saw a small girl sitting on the ground. She looked around 7 or 8 years old. Her long, dark hair fell over her shoulders in messy strands. Dust covered her face, and her clothes were worn and torn in several places. She sat with her knees pulled to her chest, arms wrapped tightly around them, as if trying to make herself smaller. Caleb stopped a short distance away so he wouldn't frighten her. The girl turned her face slightly, watching him with wide, alert eyes. They were deep brown, bright, and sharp, and he could tell she was scared but also ready to run if she had to. "Howdy," Caleb said softly. "I ain't here to harm you." The girl didn't answer. She pressed her back against a rock, her shoulders tense. Caleb noticed she had no shoes and no water nearby. The campfire was long, cold, and there were no signs of anyone else around. He slipped off his horse, moving slow and calm. "You all right, little one?" Still, she gave no reply. Caleb thought for a moment. He knew enough about the land and its people to understand that this girl might belong to a nearby Apache community. He also knew that a child alone, this far from any settlement, was never a good sign. But he didn't push her with questions. Instead, he reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small piece of dried bread and a clean canteen. He set them on the ground between them and stepped back. "You can take these if you want. I won't touch them again." For a long moment, the girl did not move. The wind whispered through the dry grass as if waiting with them. Finally, her small fingers slowly reached out. She took the bread first, nibbling it with quick, careful bites. Then, after another pause, she lifted the canteen and drank. Caleb let out a quiet breath. That small sign of trust meant something. "You got a name?" he asked kindly. The girl lowered her gaze and shook her head, though Caleb suspected she simply didn't want to speak yet. "That's all right," he said. "No hurry." He looked around the empty campsite again. There were footprints, but they were too mixed up to read clearly. Maybe someone had been with her earlier. Maybe they planned to return. But nothing around them suggested that help was coming back anytime soon. "You're out here all alone," Caleb said gently. "Can't leave you like this." He didn't walk closer. He didn't reach for her. Instead, he simply spoke with the steady, warm tone a person might use with a shy horse or a lost dog. Calm, patient, and friendly. "My place is a bit of a ride from here," he explained. "Small home. Nothing fancy. But there's food, water, and a roof. You could rest there. Only if you want." The girl looked up at him then. Her eyes searched his face, as if trying to judge the truth in his words. Caleb kept his expression soft and open. After several long seconds, she gave the smallest nod. "All right," he said, relieved. "We'll go slow." He lifted her onto the horse carefully, making sure she felt steady. She sat stiffly at first, her little hands gripping the saddle horn. But as the horse began to move in a gentle rhythm, her shoulders slowly relaxed. Caleb walked beside the horse, letting the girl ride while he held the reins. Every now and then he glanced up to make sure she was still doing all right. She kept watching the land around them, her eyes moving from the mountains to the tall, dry grass, always paying attention, always alert. He admired that. She was young, but she was strong. As the afternoon sun softened, they reached Caleb's homestead, a small wooden cabin with a porch and a few animal pens nearby. Smoke drifted lightly from the chimney, because Caleb always kept a little fire going inside during cooler months. It wasn't a big place, but it was safe, simple, and warm. When he helped the girl down from the horse, she hesitated. Caleb gave her space. "You're welcome here," he said gently. "You can stay as long as you need." She stepped closer to him then, but only by a small amount, just enough to show she wasn't scared anymore. Caleb opened the cabin door and let her enter first. Inside, the warm glow of the small fire lit the room. Caleb had built this cabin with his own hands, and though it wasn't much, it held a quiet comfort. He pointed to the small bed tucked near the wall. "You can sleep there. I'll fix you something to eat." The girl touched the blanket on the bed, feeling the softness. For the first time, Caleb saw a tiny spark of relief slip across her face. While preparing a simple stew, he noticed her watching him with careful curiosity. She didn't speak, but she didn't hide either. That was progress. He placed a bowl on the table for her, and she approached slowly, sitting down as if unsure whether she was allowed. Caleb made sure she knew she was. "You eat as much as you like," he said. She tasted the stew, then quickly took another bite. Then another. Caleb smiled a little. It felt good to help someone, especially someone who clearly needed it. When she finished eating, she finally whispered a soft word, barely more than a breath. "Nayeli." Caleb looked up. "That your name?" She nodded. "Well, Nayeli," he said kindly. "I'm Caleb. It's real nice to meet you." Her eyes softened a bit, and she gave a tiny nod as if accepting his presence. As the evening settled in and the sky turned a deep shade of purple, Caleb sat by the fire, whittling a small piece of wood. Nayeli curled up on the bed, wrapped in the blanket he gave her. Within minutes, she fell into a deep sleep, trusting him enough to rest. Caleb watched her for a moment, feeling something unfamiliar tug at his chest. He didn't know where she came from, or what had happened to leave her alone out there. But he knew one thing for sure. He had found her for a reason, and until he discovered where she belonged, he would make sure she was safe. The desert night grew quiet around the cabin, and for the first time in many years, Caleb didn't feel quite so alone. Caleb woke before the sun rose. As he usually did, the cabin was quiet, and for a moment he almost forgot he had a guest. Then he saw Nayeli curled under the blanket, sleeping peacefully. It surprised him how quickly he had grown used to the small presence of the girl inside his home. Something about seeing her safe made the morning feel different, lighter somehow. He stepped outside to feed his horse and get breakfast started. The air had a fresh chill, and a soft orange glow touched the horizon. When he returned inside, Nayeli was sitting up on the bed, blinking sleepily. Her hair was messy, and she rubbed her eyes with both hands like any child waking after a long, tiring day. "Good mornin', Nayeli," he said with a gentle smile. She didn't speak, but she gave a tiny nod. That tiny gesture was enough to show she felt a little more comfortable today than yesterday. Caleb placed a bowl of warm oats on the table and motioned her over. She came slowly but without fear. After a few bites, she looked up at him with quiet curiosity. The same way children look at something they are still trying to understand. "You feeling better today?" he asked softly. She nodded again. Caleb knew he couldn't keep her here forever. Someone had to be missing her family, friends, a community. He wanted to find whoever they were. He wanted to return her to people she trusted and loved. But he also felt a small, unexpected worry. The thought of her leaving his home sooner than later made the cabin feel strangely empty in his mind. Still, he knew it was the right thing to do. After breakfast, he gathered a few supplies: water, food, a small blanket, and a set of warm clothes he thought might fit her. She watched quietly as he worked, not yet understanding what he planned. "Nayeli," he said gently, kneeling beside her so they were closer in height. I want to find your people. Your family. I'm sure they're looking for you. Her eyes widened slightly at the word family, and she gripped the blanket tighter. Caleb softened his voice even more. We'll just look. I won't leave you. Not ever. You stay close to me. And I'll keep you safe. Trime. She studied his face for a long time, as if deciding whether she believed him. Then slowly, she reached out her hand and held onto his sleeve. Caleb's heart gave a small tug at the simple, trusting gesture. That settles it, he said kindly. We ride together. By mid-morning, the two of them were on the trail again. Caleb let Nayeli ride the horse while he walked beside them, just as he had the day before. Sometimes she held onto the saddle horn. Sometimes she held onto his old worn hat, which she seemed to find interesting. Caleb didn't mind. Her innocent interest made him smile. They followed signs across the land, footprints, old campfires, broken twigs, simple clues that only someone like Caleb, who had spent his life outdoors, could read well. But the trail was not straight. It twisted through quiet valleys and along dry creeks, and sometimes the signs faded completely. Caleb stopped often to check the land, kneeling to study the earth. Each time he did, Nayeli watched him with cautious hope. You see anything? She finally whispered one afternoon, surprising him with her soft voice. He turned toward her with a warm smile. Not yet, little one. But we will. Someone's been through here not long ago. Could be your people. Nayeli's eyes brightened a little, though Caleb could also see a flicker of worry. The unknown always held both fear and hope. He understood that well. They continued on, moving at a calm, steady pace. Caleb didn't want to rush. Children got tired easily, and he wanted Nayeli to feel safe, not pressured. He talked sometimes soft, simple stories about the land, or the stars, or his horse. Nayeli listened quietly, and though she didn't always answer, she stayed close. By late afternoon, they reached a small stream surrounded by tall cottonwood trees. The leaves shimmered with a soft silver shine whenever the breeze brushed through them. Caleb let the horse drink while he refilled their water. He noticed Nayeli standing near the edge of the water, staring at her reflection. Her face looked thoughtful, almost sad. Caleb approached slowly. What's on your mind? He asked gently. She hesitated, then touched her own cheek lightly. My mother, she whispered, her voice tiny and trembling with longing. Caleb felt a warm ache in his chest. We'll find her, he promised. I'm sure she's looking for you too. Nayeli blinked hard, fighting back tears. Caleb didn't touch her. He didn't want to startle her, but he stayed close enough that she felt his presence. Sometimes comfort didn't need words or actions. Sometimes it just needed someone willing to stay by your side. As they prepared to continue, Caleb spotted new tracks, fresh ones. People had passed through that area not long ago. He studied the footprints carefully, following them with his eyes as they trailed deeper into a narrow canyon. Nayeli, he said softly. I think we're getting close. She looked at him with a mix of hope and fear. He gave her a steady, reassuring nod, then led the horse toward the canyon path. The canyon was narrow but bright, with sunlight bouncing off the tall walls of stone. They walked slowly, listening to the soft echoes of their steps. Then, far in the distance, Caleb heard something faint voices. Calm voices. Not frightened or hurried, his heart lifted. This might be the group he was searching for. Nayeli also heard something and sat straighter in the saddle. She turned her head toward the sound, her eyes wide with anticipation. Easy, Caleb said softly. We'll go real calm. As they rounded a bend, they saw several people gathered near a cluster of small shelters. The moment they appeared, the voices stopped, and all eyes turned toward Caleb and the girl. Nayeli immediately tensed, her small fingers gripping the saddle tightly. Caleb placed a gentle hand on her leg to reassure her. It's all right, he whispered. One of the people, a tall woman with long, braided hair and calm, steady eyes, stepped forward. She looked strong and graceful, and she carried herself with a quiet certainty that made Caleb feel as though she were someone important in the group. Her eyes went straight to Nayeli. Caleb saw the way her breath caught, and her hands flew to her mouth, as if she had been holding her heart in her throat for days. Caleb realized instantly, this was her mother. Nayeli stared for only a heartbeat before she leaned forward, her whole body trembling with emotion. Caleb helped her down gently, and the girl ran into her mother's arms. The woman held her tightly, her face filled with relief and overflowing love. She touched Nayeli's face, her hair, her shoulders, as if making sure she was truly there. Nayeli clung to her, burying her face in her mother's chest. Caleb stepped back a little, not wanting to intrude on the emotional reunion. He felt a warm satisfaction knowing he had brought the girl back where she belonged. After several moments, the woman looked up at him. Her expression was grateful, but also cautious. She didn't know him. She didn't know why he had been with her daughter. Caleb gave a small, respectful nod. "I found her out near the ridge," he said in a humble voice. "She was alone. I just wanted to bring her home." The woman studied him, her eyes deep and thoughtful. She held Nayeli protectively. But there was no anger in her face, only concern, relief, and a deep sense of responsibility. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice gentle but strong. "My name is Ayana." Caleb touched the brim of his hat slightly. "Caleb Ward, ma'am." Nayeli held her mother's hand tightly, but she also looked back at Caleb, her eyes showing trust. Ayana noticed. "You showed kindness to my child," Ayana said. "For that, you are welcome among us." Caleb nodded again, though he felt a strange flutter in his chest at her words. Something in her gaze held a depth he hadn't expected. He had come only to return a lost child to her people, but meeting Ayana felt like the beginning of something he hadn't yet understood. Caleb stayed near the edge of the Apache camp, allowing Ayana and her people to settle back into their routines after Nayeli's return. He didn't want to intrude, but he also didn't want to leave too quickly. Something in Nayeli's small smile when she looked his way made him feel he should remain close for a while longer. The girl would come out of her mother's shelter now and then, always searching the camp until her eyes found Caleb. Each time, she waved shyly before running back to Ayana's side. Ayana noticed this, of course. She noticed everything. She was a woman who seemed to read the land, the sky, and people's hearts with a single glance. Caleb felt strangely aware of himself under her calm gaze, aware of how he stood, how he spoke, how he breathed. She wasn't unkind, just quiet and observant. And something about her presence made him wish to be deserving of her trust. The camp itself was a place of gentle order. Some people repaired shelters made of wooden frames and soft coverings. Others prepared food, ground corn, or sorted herbs gathered from the hills. Children played near the stream, their laughter floating in the warm air. Everyone had a task, a role, and a calm purpose. Caleb admired that. It reminded him of how the land worked, simple, steady, each part doing its job. Ayana invited him to sit with the group at mealtime on the second day. Caleb accepted politely. Though he felt unsure of where exactly he fit, Nayeli sat between her mother and him, stealing quiet glances at the cowboy, as if checking to make sure he was still there. She had grown quickly attached to him, and Ayana could see it clearly. "You have been very kind to my daughter," Ayana said as they ate. Her voice was soft but strong. "She speaks of you." Caleb looked down with a small, humble smile. "She's a good little one. Brave too." Ayana studied him for a moment, trying to understand the man who had cared for her child without expecting anything in return. She had known many types of people in her life, some good, some careless, some selfish. Caleb didn't seem to fit any of those categories. There was a quiet steadiness in him, a sincerity that didn't need big words to prove itself. After the meal, Ayana approached him again. "We are trying to repair our shelters. A strong wind yesterday damaged several of them." She paused. "Not demanding, not assuming. If you wish to help, your hands would be welcome." Caleb nodded immediately. "Of course. I'd be glad to lend a hand." And so the next morning, he worked alongside the Apache villagers. He lifted wooden poles, tied strong knots, and secured coverings where Ayanna directed. She worked beside him, graceful, steady, skillful. She didn't waste movement or speak without purpose. Caleb admired that in her. She was gentle with the children, respectful with the elders, and hard-working in everything she did. At times, their hands brushed as they lifted pieces of wood together. Neither spoke of it, but each time their eyes met afterward, something warm and quiet passed between them, something neither of them yet understood. Nayeli followed them often, carrying small bundles of feathers or twigs, pretending she was helping just as much as the adults. Caleb always thanked her warmly for her important work, which made the girl beam with pride. Ayanna noticed how easily Caleb made Nayeli smile, and though she tried to stay composed, her heart softened a little more each time. By the third day, Caleb felt almost like a part of the camp. Not completely, he knew he was still an outsider, but people had begun to greet him with friendly nods. A few even asked him to teach them how he tied certain knots, or how he found clean water so easily in dry places. Caleb gladly shared what he knew. In return, they taught him small things too, how to read tiny signs in the wind, how to recognize herbs that eased tired muscles, how to listen to the land in a way he'd never learned before. Ayanna watched these small exchanges with quiet approval. She could see that Caleb did not try to lead or take control. He simply helped and learned, moving with respect for the people around him. It was rare to see an outsider offer so much without asking for anything. One afternoon, as they repaired another shelter, Ayanna paused and looked at Caleb thoughtfully. "You have a gentle spirit," she said softly. "It is not something that can be hidden." Caleb felt warmth spread across his chest, though he tried not to show it too much. "Just doing what feels right," he said. Ayanna tilted her head slightly. Many people choose what is easy, not what is right. He didn't know how to respond to that, so he simply nodded. Their eyes held for a long moment before she returned to her work, but Caleb felt something shift inside him, something deep and unfamiliar. That evening, the camp gathered near the stream. The sky turned shades of pink and orange as the sun lowered, and the warm breeze carried the soft sound of water over stones. Caleb sat near a group of elders, listening respectfully as they told old stories, their voices calm like the river. Even though he didn't understand every word, the rhythm felt peaceful. Ayanna sat on the other side of the gathering, weaving a small basket. Her hands moved with practiced grace. Nayeli curled beside her mother, leaning against her shoulder sleepily. Every so often, Ayanna glanced toward Caleb, and he felt her gaze like a warm touch, though she quickly returned to her weaving each time. When the stars began to appear, Ayanna walked over to him. Nayeli trotted behind her, sleepy but content. "You have done much for us these days," Ayanna said. "We are grateful." Caleb shook his head lightly. "I've only helped with what needed doing." "Still," Ayanna replied, "it means something." Nayeli reached for Caleb's hand and held it gently. Ayanna noticed the quiet bond forming between them, and instead of worry, she felt gratitude. Her daughter had been frightened and alone before Caleb found her. Now she smiled again. She laughed. She slept peacefully. For that, Ayanna couldn't help appreciating the cowboy more and more. Caleb glanced at the camp around him, lit softly by moonlight and the glow of small fires. "Your people. They've been kind to me," he said. "I didn't expect that." Ayanna held a calm expression. "Kindness grows where it is planted. You planted it first." Their eyes met again, soft, quiet, understanding. Something about standing near her felt natural, as if the desert wind had brought him exactly where he was meant to be, without him even realizing it. But Caleb didn't speak these thoughts. He simply stood there, breathing in the gentle night air, while Ayanna and Nayeli remained beside him. Over the next few days, Caleb discovered more about Ayanna without needing long conversations. She rose early, always the first to start a task. She cared deeply for her people, checking on elders and helping other mothers with their children. She moved with calm purpose, and yet her laughter when it came was soft and warm like sunlight breaking through clouds. Every time she smiled, Caleb felt something inside him unfold, slow and unexpected. He didn't know what to call these feelings. He had never been a man who thought much about matters of the heart. He lived simply, worked hard, and kept to himself. But now, standing beside Ayanna, working near her, hearing her gentle voice call his name, it stirred something he had kept hidden beneath years of solitude. Ayanna, too, felt something growing quietly. She admired Caleb's patience, his humility, and the simple strength he showed without pride. She admired his gentle way with Nayeli, the way he waited for the girl to speak instead of pressing her. She admired the peaceful way he spoke to the land, his deep respect for everything around him. Still, she kept her feelings guarded. Life had taught her to be careful with her heart. But each day, the guard slipped a little more. One evening, after a long day of shared work, Caleb walked with Ayanna along the stream, while Nayeli skipped stones nearby. The sky glowed with soft twilight. Their shadows stretched side by side, almost touching. "You helped us rebuild," Ayanna said quietly. Caleb looked at her with gentle honesty. "I didn't do it for thanks. I just wanted to be here." Ayanna's eyes softened. "I know." Their footsteps slowed. Neither wanted the moment to end. They didn't speak more, but their silence was warm, full of meaning neither knew how to express yet. Something unspoken had begun between them, something neither planned, but both felt. And though neither knew where it would lead, they both knew one thing. The cowboy and the Apache woman were no longer strangers in each other's world. During the days that followed, the camp grew peaceful again, as if the land itself had taken a deep breath and settled. The sound of quiet talking floated from the shelters each morning, and children laughed near the stream as they played simple games with stones and feathers. Life moved gently, like water flowing over smooth rocks. Caleb still helped wherever help was needed. Sometimes he carried wooden poles, or helped repair tools. Other times he went out with a small group to gather plants and berries from the nearby hills. Each time he returned, Nayeli would run up to him with excitement, eager to show him something new. She had discovered a shiny pebble, a small wildflower, or a little drawing she made in the dirt. Her trust warmed Caleb's heart more than he expected. Ayanna watched these moments from a distance, and every time she saw her daughter smile, her heart seemed to grow lighter. She felt grateful, not only for what Caleb had done, but for the calm and kindness he continued to bring into their daily life. He never pushed himself into their world. He never tried to lead or change anything. He simply blended into their days like a soft breeze. But while the camp felt peaceful, something else was quietly building, something softer, quieter, and deeper than friendship. Caleb felt it each time Ayanna walked beside him. He felt it in the way she spoke his name, in the way her eyes held his for a heartbeat longer than necessary. And Ayanna felt it too, though she kept her emotions tucked carefully inside. Her heart had learned to move slowly, carefully, but even the most guarded heart could not stay untouched when someone treated it with gentle respect. One cool morning, Caleb woke early and stepped outside his small tent. He saw Ayanna near the edge of the camp, gathering herbs into a woven basket. The early sunlight washed over her, catching in her long braids. She looked calm, peaceful, and strong. Without thinking too much, he walked toward her. "Need a hand?" he asked quietly. Ayanna looked up, and a warm smile touched her lips. "You can help if you like." She handed him a small bag for the herbs, and they walked side by side through the tall grass. The wind whispered softly through the leaves, and the air smelled fresh, like new beginnings. They moved slowly, stopping to pick herbs from shaded spots or near small stones where the plants grew best. Ayanna explained the uses of each one. The leaves that eased tired muscles, the flowers that made calming tea, the roots that helped with sore throats. Caleb listened with real interest. "You know a lot about the land," he said. Ayanna nodded. "It teaches us, if we listen." "I'd like to learn more," Caleb admitted. Ayanna paused, surprised. Many people do not care to learn. They only take. "Maybe," Caleb said softly. "But I ain't one of them." For a long moment, Ayanna simply looked at him. Her eyes searched his face, reading the sincerity there. And something inside her softened even more. She gently showed him how to identify a certain plant by touching its leaves with the tip of his finger. You can feel the difference, she explained. This one is smooth. Its look-alike has tiny ridges. Caleb brushed the leaf gently. I see what you mean. Their hands were close, very close, but neither moved away. The moment felt natural, as if the land itself had guided them there. After gathering what they needed, they walked back toward the camp. Nayeli saw them returning and ran to them with excitement. Look, she said, holding out a little clay figure she had shaped with her hands. It looked like a small horse with uneven legs. It's beautiful, Caleb said, kneeling to see it more closely. Just needs a little smoothing here. He gently helped her shape the clay, showing her how to support the soft edges. Ayanna watched them with warm eyes. Her daughter trusted him deeply, and that trust meant everything to her. As the day continued, people in the camp worked together to reorganize supplies and strengthen their shelters for the coming cooler months. Caleb lifted wooden beams while Ayanna tied the coverings in place. They moved together easily, as if they had been working side by side for years instead of just days. At midday, they took a break near the stream. Caleb watched the water sparkle in the sunlight, and Ayanna sat beside him, her expression thoughtful. You are quiet today, she said softly. Just thinkin', Caleb replied. About what? He took a slow breath, searching for the right words. About how different life feels here. Peaceful, like everything moves at the right pace. Ayanna nodded slowly. The land teaches patience. It reminds us to move gently and with respect. Caleb glanced at her. You remind me of that too. Her cheeks warmed slightly at the compliment, though her expression stayed composed. And what do you teach? She asked with a faint smile. Caleb chuckled softly. Not much, I reckon. Ayanna shook her head lightly. You teach kindness. You teach calmness. These things matter. Their eyes met again, and something tender passed between them. Ayanna felt it, and Caleb did too. But neither one spoke of it yet. Their growing bond felt delicate, like a flower blooming for the first time, something not to be rushed. In the late afternoon, a group of villagers returned from walking the nearby hills. They carried bundles of reeds and branches for repairs. Caleb helped them carry the materials to the center of the camp. As he worked, he noticed Ayanna speaking with an elder. The elder nodded solemnly and then looked toward Caleb with a thoughtful expression. Ayanna approached him afterward. The elder says you have a steady heart, she said. He believes the land brought you to us for a reason. Caleb rubbed the back of his neck, a little embarrassed. I don't know about that. Ayanna smiled softly. Sometimes the land knows more than we do. The evening arrived with a soft golden light that wrapped the camp in warmth. Families gathered near small fires, sharing stories and simple meals. Caleb sat beside Ayanna and Nayeli, feeling strangely at home. He didn't speak much, but he didn't need to. His presence was enough. As the stars began to appear, Ayanna looked up at the night sky. The stars guide us, she said quietly. They tell us that nothing is alone in the sky. Every light belongs to something. Caleb looked at her, wondering if her words held a deeper meaning, one she wasn't speaking aloud. He wanted to tell her how peaceful he felt near her, how seeing her smile made something warm unfold inside him, how her calm presence filled spaces in his life he hadn't even realized were empty. But he didn't say any of that, not yet. Instead, he simply said, I'm glad I'm here. Ayanna's gentle gaze rested on his face. I am glad too. They sat quietly, side by side, their shoulders almost touching. Nayeli leaned asleep against her mother's lap. The night air wrapped around them softly, peaceful and warm. Something deep and meaningful was growing between the cowboy and the Apache woman, something quiet, honest, and full of promise. And though neither spoke the words out loud, both felt the truth forming gently in their hearts. They were no longer walking separate paths. Their lives had begun to weave together, slow and steady, like threads in a beautiful new tapestry. In the days that followed, the camp settled into a calm and steady rhythm. The air grew cooler in the mornings, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of dry grass and warm earth. Life moved quietly, But something new filled the spaces between each moment, something warm, something hopeful. Caleb felt it every time he woke and stepped outside his tent, hearing the soft chatter of the camp and seeing Ayanna across the way, gathering herbs or speaking with the elders. Sometimes she caught him looking, and she would give him a small smile, soft, gentle, and full of unspoken meaning. He would return the smile, feeling something stir deep in his chest. Nayeli had grown even more attached to him. Each morning, she ran to greet him, her small feet pattering across the ground as she carried some new treasure from the land, a stone shaped like a heart, a feather with beautiful stripes, a tiny piece of clay she shaped into a bird. Caleb saved every gift she gave him, tucking them into a small bag as if they were the most precious things he owned. Ayanna noticed this, and though she sometimes tried to hide her smile, she couldn't hide the warmth glowing in her eyes. It surprised her how safe she felt with Caleb nearby, how natural it became to share moments with him, whether they were working, talking, or simply standing together in silence. One crisp morning, Caleb walked with Ayanna to a quiet hill just outside the camp. The grass brushed softly against their legs as they climbed, and the sky stretched open above them in a bright, endless blue. Ayanna carried a woven basket filled with herbs she planned to dry, while Caleb carried nothing but a calm heart and a desire to be where she was. They reached the top of the hill and looked out at the land below. Small streams curved like shining ribbons. The camp looked peaceful from this distance, like a small patch of life cradled gently by the earth. "It's beautiful," Caleb said in a low voice. Ayanna nodded. "This land holds our stories. Every hill, every stone, every tree." She paused before asking, "Does your land hold your story too?" Caleb looked out across the open plain, thinking, "I don't rightly know," he said quietly. "I never stayed in one place long enough to make a story." Ayanna glanced at him, her expression soft with understanding. "Maybe it is not the land that holds the story," she said. "Maybe it is the people." Caleb's heart gave a small tug, and he found himself looking at her with more feeling than he usually allowed to show. "Maybe so," he whispered. They stood there for a long moment, the breeze brushing gently around them. Their silence felt peaceful, like two souls resting side by side. When they returned to the camp, they found several villagers preparing for an evening gathering. Food was being cooked, small fires were being built, and children were helping with whatever tasks they could manage. It was a day of thanks, something the community held when the land provided enough food, water, and safety for all. Ayanna invited Caleb to join them, and he agreed with a warm feeling in his chest. As the sun set, people sat in small circles, sharing meals, stories, and laughter. Ayanna sat close to Caleb, with Nayeli curled happily between them. An elder began to tell a story about how the land brought people together in unexpected ways, how strangers sometimes met and became family, how hearts sometimes found connections they didn't know they were searching for. As the elder spoke, Ayanna and Caleb exchanged a quiet look, both feeling as if the words were speaking to them. Later that evening, after the food had been shared and the stories had quieted, Ayanna stood and walked a little distance from the group. She looked up at the stars, her long braids swaying gently with the breeze. Caleb noticed and followed her, giving her space but not wanting to let the moment slip away. She turned when she heard his soft footsteps. "The stars are bright tonight," she said, her voice warm and gentle. "They sure are," Caleb replied. But his eyes weren't on the stars. They were on her. She looked peaceful under the night sky, like she belonged there, like she was part of the land itself. Ayanna looked at him with thoughtful eyes. "You have given much to us," she said softly. "Not just help, not just work. You—" She paused, searching for the right words. "You brought comfort. You brought patience. You brought kindness to my daughter's heart." Caleb swallowed lightly, touched by her sincerity. "She brought plenty to mine, too," he said. "You both did." Her breath caught slightly at his words, though she kept her composure. I did not expect someone to come into our lives like this, she admitted. I did not expect my heart to trust again so easily. Caleb took a slow step closer, not too close, but close enough that she felt his presence clearly. I didn't expect you either, he said quietly. But I'm glad I found you. Both of you. Ayana's eyes softened, and for the first time, she didn't try to hide her feelings. Caleb, she whispered, you have become part of our days, part of our peace. When Nayeli looks for you, she smiles. When I see you, my heart feels. She paused again, unsure how much to say. Feels what? Caleb asked gently. Ayana held his gaze. Feels calm, she said. Feels warm, feels hopeful. Caleb's breathing slowed, and something deep inside him softened completely. That's how you make me feel too, Ayana. They stood under the stars, the quiet night wrapping around them like a soft blanket. It wasn't a grand moment. It was gentle, simple, and full of truth. Nayeli wandered over then, rubbing her sleepy eyes and holding her small blanket. She reached for Caleb's hand, and then for Ayana's, linking the three of them together, without saying a single word. Ayana looked down at her daughter, then up at Caleb, and a tender smile touched her lips. In that moment, it felt like the land itself had woven their three lives together, with invisible threads. Over the next few days, Caleb helped the camp prepare for the cooler season. He worked beside Ayana, gathering wood and sorting supplies. He helped the elders carry water. He played simple games with Nayeli, making her laugh with his silly attempts at shaping clay animals. The more time he spent with them, the clearer it became he didn't want to leave. The thought of riding away alone, back to the empty cabin in the desert, felt hollow now. He had found something here, something he didn't even know his heart had been missing. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Caleb stood beside Ayana, near the fire. Nayeli slept inside their shelter, and the camp was quiet. Caleb, Ayana said softly, the land is peaceful now. You have done so much for us. If you choose to return to your home, you may do so with honor. Caleb looked at her carefully. Do you want me to leave? Ayana's breath caught. I did not say that. Then what do you want? He asked gently. Ayana held his gaze, searching for courage inside her heart. I want you to stay, she admitted. Not because you helped us, but because your presence brings peace. To the camp, to Nayeli, to me. Caleb felt something loosen inside him, something warm and full of meaning. Ayana, he said quietly, I'd like to stay, if you'll have me. She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. I would. Their hands touched not by accident, but by choice, and for the first time, neither pulled away. Their hearts felt steady, full, and certain. Nayeli stirred inside the shelter, calling softly in her sleep. Ayana smiled and looked toward her daughter before looking back at Caleb. You are part of our family now, she said gently. Caleb felt a deep peace settle through him, warmer than any fire, stronger than any sunrise he had seen. He had spent years living alone, riding through empty stretches of land, believing he didn't need anything more than the open sky. But now he understood something he had never known before. Home wasn't just a place. It was people. It was warmth. It was connection. It was love. And he had found it here with Ayana and Nayeli. As the night wrapped around them, calm and full of stars, Caleb knew he would never again ride through life alone. He had found a new path, a new purpose, a new heart to stand beside. The cowboy who once kept his distance from the world had found a family he never expected, and a love that would quietly guide him for the rest of his days.